Long before red carpets, flashing cameras, and fan hysteria defined their lives, a surprising number of Hollywood legends were standing on very different kinds of front lines. Between 1950 and 1953, as the Korean War erupted halfway around the world, thousands of men and women were drafted or volunteered to serve their countries, and among them were future Oscar winners, music icons, comedic pioneers, and even astronauts who would go on to reshape human history. Their service wasn't some publicity stunt or brief cameo in a military uniform for the cameras. Many of these celebrities faced real danger, life-altering experiences, and grueling discipline, all while having no idea that fame was waiting just a few years down the road. Yet for various reasons, many of them never turned their military service into a key part of their public image. In some cases, they were humble. In others, their careers became so massive that their time in uniform faded into the background. But when you pull back the curtain, their stories paint a fascinating picture of resilience, sacrifice, and unexpected heroism. Take Michael Caine, for example. Before he became the distinguished British actor with an unmistakable voice, he was just a young man named Maurice Micklewhite drafted into the British Army. In 1951, he found himself near the Samcheon River in Korea with the Royal Fusiliers, enduring bitter cold nights and dangerous patrols. He contracted malaria and watched friends die in combat. Ironically, one of his earliest film roles would have him playing a British soldier in a hill in Korea, a performance rooted in experience, not imagination. Caine's effortless gravitas on screen came, in part, from those formative years when survival was no act. James Garner, long admired for his easygoing charm in Maverick and The Rockford Files, also carried scars that fans rarely saw. Serving in the US Army during the Korean War, he was wounded twice and received 2 Purple Hearts. Behind his smooth performances was a man who had faced the chaos of war and walked away with real medals, not props. His quiet strength on screen mirrored the unspoken toughness forged on the battlefield. Harvey Keitel, the intense, often unpredictable presence in Taxi Driver and Reservoir Dogs, enlisted in the US Marine Corps at just 17. Though he wasn't stationed on the Korean peninsula itself, he served in Lebanon during a volatile time, part of the same broader military apparatus that defined that era. His time in the Marines instilled a discipline and sense of authority that became trademarks of his acting style. When Keitel barked orders on screen, it didn't feel rehearsed. It felt lived. Charles Bronson, the rugged face of American grit, had already served as a tail gunner in World War II before re-enlisting during the Korean War. His blue-collar roots and repeated willingness to serve made him more than just a Hollywood tough guy. He was the real deal. His performances in films like The Dirty Dozen and Death Wish resonated precisely because he wasn't pretending. His steely-eyed characters reflected his life, not a screenwriter's invention. Peter Boyle, known for his later work in Everybody Loves Raymond and Young Frankenstein, wore a Navy uniform before donning any costumes. Serving as an ensign during the Korean War, he spent years aboard destroyers at sea. The disciplined, thoughtful air he brought to his roles can be traced to those nights on deck, watching vast, dark waters and contemplating the world far away from Hollywood lights. Johnny Cash's military service is perhaps one of the most poetic stories on this list. Before he became the Man in Black, Cash enlisted in the US Air Force and was stationed in Germany during the Korean War era. It was there, surrounded by military life and foreign landscapes, that he bought his first guitar and started writing songs. Those early tunes laid the groundwork for the music that would change American culture. His time in the service didn't just shape his character, it literally shaped his art. Clint Eastwood, the quintessential symbol of American ruggedness, was drafted during the Korean War and served at Fort Ord in California as a lifeguard. He didn't see combat, but his time in the Army left its mark. A near-death experience in which the plane he was aboard crashed into the Pacific Ocean would become a defining story later in life. His calm demeanor under pressure and the stoic toughness that became his trademark on screen were honed not in Hollywood, but in real-life moments when survival depended on his ability to stay cool. Ed McMahon, beloved for decades as Johnny Carson's booming voice sidekick, had an entirely different kind of stage before television. As a Marine Corps pilot, he flew more than 85 combat missions during the Korean War. After active service, he continued in the reserves. His poise, confidence, and clear command of the spotlight all trace back to the cockpit, where mistakes could mean far more than a flubbed line. One of the most surprising names on this list might be Bea Arthur. Long before the Golden Girls, Arthur was one of the first women to enlist in the U.S. Marine Corps Women's Reserve. She served as a typist and truck driver during the Korean War era, a bold move in a time when female military service was still relatively rare. Her sharp wit and commanding presence as Dorothy Zbornak on TV likely had their roots in the resilience she developed while breaking gender barriers in the military. Neil Armstrong's story is often told as one of space exploration, but before his quiet voice echoed across the globe during the moon landing, he was a Navy pilot flying F-9F Panther jets over Korea. He completed 78 combat missions, surviving being shot down once and proving his precision and bravery long before Apollo 11. His experience as a young pilot shaped the calm, analytical demeanor that would later make him the perfect man to take that giant leap for mankind. Tom Laughlin, best known for his countercultural Billy Jack films, wore a U.S. Army uniform during the Korean War. His military service informed his later activism and filmmaking. He was never one to follow the Hollywood crowd. His work often reflected a blend of discipline and defiance, a duality born from his time in the service. George Kennedy's military career was unusually long, nearly 16 years in the U.S. Army, including the Korean War. Rising to the rank of captain and working in Army public relations, Kennedy developed the toughness and authority that would later make his performances in films like Cool Hand Luke unforgettable. He didn't just act like a leader on screen, he'd actually been one. Ted Williams, the baseball legend, temporarily traded his bat for a fighter jet. After serving as a pilot in World War II, Williams was recalled to duty in 1952 for the Korean War, flying 39 combat missions with the Marine Corps. He even served alongside John Glenn, another name that would soon make history in the skies. Williams' decision to step away from baseball at the height of his career earned him immense respect. While fans were watching games, he was risking his life in the cockpit. Buzz Aldrin's story parallels Armstrong's in fascinating ways. Before becoming the second man to walk on the moon, Aldrin flew 66 combat missions in Korea as a U.S. Air Force pilot, shooting down 2 enemy MiGs. His engineering mind, combined with his coolness in combat, helped him later troubleshoot problems during the Apollo 11 mission. His military service didn't just build his resume, it forged his ability to face the unknown with a steady hand. And then there's John Glenn. Before becoming the first American to orbit Earth, Glenn was a Marine Corps pilot who flew 90 combat missions during the Korean War, shooting down 3 MiGs. His precision and fearlessness in the air earned him commendations and set him on a path towards space and politics. Glenn's courage was legendary long before he ever wore an astronaut suit. What makes these stories so striking isn't just the list of names, it's how their service was often tucked away beneath layers of Hollywood myth-making. Michael Caine rarely led with his malaria-stricken days on the Korean front. James Garner didn't talk endlessly about his Purple Hearts. Clint Eastwood's Army service wasn't his claim to fame. Bea Arthur's groundbreaking military role was barely known until decades after she became a TV icon. Even Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, whose entire lives became symbols of human achievement, had early chapters written in the heat of combat. Some of them, like Johnny Cash, allowed their military years to subtly shape their art. These aren't just fun trivia facts, they're reminders that fame often conceals complex human stories of bravery, loss, and resilience. Many of these stars didn't talk much about their military years, not because they were ashamed, but because those years were part of a different life. Yet without them, the people they became, the legends we remember, might have been very different. In a time when celebrity often feels superficial, their stories remind us that some of Hollywood's brightest lights once stood shoulder to shoulder with ordinary servicemen and women facing extraordinary circumstances. They weren't born icons, they were shaped by history, by duty, and by experiences that most of their fans will never fully grasp. Their fame might have been built on screens and stages, but their character was forged in uniform, and that, perhaps, is the most extraordinary twist of all.